Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with James Lancaster, Managing Director of Alderney Electricity. We're going to discuss a few current energy matters and then take a look at the progress with the energy policy following last week's public presentations. James, good to see you.
Good to see you, Tony.
You almost you almost look in holiday mode there with the background.
Well, actually, I confess I have been on holiday. So we're in northern Spain for a couple of weeks. So I'm looking a little bit more tanned than usual. Yes, it's very nice too. Nice, relaxing break. Oh, it feels like only a couple of days since I saw you last. Hang on a minute. It was.
I think it was. And you'll note I got pole position.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Let's kick off with our usual in terms of the electricity, diesel and kero prices, because there was a drop, wasn't there, recently?
There has been a drop. We had a shipment last week, or sort of early part of last week, and prices have come down a little bit.
Yeah.
So diesel, well, actually, both have come down. Probably the actual refinery price is sort of 6-7 pence less, but because we have got expensive stock in the tank, the impact upon the overall price on Alderney isn't that much. Kero's come down about 4 pence, and we had quite a lot of diesel left, and that's come down about 2 pence. So Kero's back under £1 now, a litre.
And so you did well, James, as ever, in terms of date selection for this last drop.
Well, seemingly, yes, seemingly, but it's nice to see that prices are starting to sort of normalise, started to come back down now. So fingers crossed, we're moving in the right direction.
How long will that drop last? Will it see you through to Christmas or?
Oh no, at the back end of July. So probably, sorry. This one probably into August, early part of August, something like that. Then we have another one around sort of October, November time.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And have to report there've been a couple of power cuts since we last spoke. What were the reasons, and how does it remedy itself?
Oh, it's interesting. We had a couple of odd ones just recently where we've had failures. Unusual failures with generators and alternators.
Yeah.
So the most recent one was sort of week before last, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
So what we had there was a problem with an alternator, which when we investigated, it appeared that the alternator, one component in the alternator, had not been connected properly from the off. This is one that we have had taken out of service because it's done quite a lot of hours and sent away for refurbishment. But it seems that when it was sent back, there was something that wasn't sort of correctly. So and then that had a knock-on effect. So it's an unusual one, really, but where we're finding is that we've got an increasingly long checklist of things that we are learning that we have to look at when we put these things back together again, just to be on the safe side.
So we can't blame it on Bill Gates.
No, sadly not on this occasion. No, nothing to do with Microsoft hackers.
How does it work though? If we get a cut, the engineers turn out, do they go down and have a look, see what's happening and everything?
Yeah. So we have plenty. So what we are seeing at the moment, again, there's a number of things that can complicate the situation, not least time of the day, how many engines we're running at any one time, things like that. What they will, the system, depending on what happens, the system will register a fault.
Yeah.
And then shut the basically shut the power station down, and then the guys turn out, switch it back on again. We generally have power back on within half an hour. It's not a major concern. We have 8 engines. What we're trying to do at the moment is to not run more engines than we need to at any one time. Which, means if there is a fault on the engine, depending upon the time of the day, the system can't pick up the load as quickly as we like, and therefore the system has to shut it down. Now this will be rectified, the problem will go away as soon as we are able to put some storage on the network, which we will need to do anyway to proceed with the renewables program.
And
So
we're
as
going
soon as we
to,
have some storage,
yeah, we're
sorry.
going to talk about that in a few moments, aren't we? In terms of,
Yeah, sure, sure.
I have to say that,
Yeah.
in my view, sounding ever so humble, I thought the presentation went very well. Last week you did two, didn't you? One at 4 and one at 6, well attended.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that the 3x3 kicks off with solar energy, which is probably the best way of doing it because it's the least contentious, isn't it, really?
It is the least contentious, and I think we've it's gone that way because of the issues around the use of agricultural land. And we originally went, the scale of the installation that we can now manage on the network is beyond what's available, beyond the land that's immediately available within the building area. And so we had to go to states to say, oh, we need a bit more land than we thought we did. Can we now grant a amendment ordinance to allow us to build a renewable energy project within the designated area on agricultural land? And states members flagged up some issues going back to sort of October, November last year about the potential impact on agricultural land, whether we were losing prime agricultural land for energy purposes, etc., etc., etc. I mean, we don't need to go into that big debate. There's a lot of issues around that, not least the fact that we aren't actually doing much agriculture on Ireland at the moment, but this is all wrapped up with the state's agricultural policy. They are trying to encourage more growing on Ireland, more agricultural production in order to look at food security issues, looking at fresh local produce, making sure that's available in the shops and so on and so forth. So I think it's quite important for them that they are not seen to be then taking on projects which are impacting upon that intent. So as we've gone through, we've looked more and more at this. Right from the outset, we had seen this as a agrivoltaic proposal, so combined agriculture and energy. And our argument to states right from the off was that actually we're not losing agricultural production here. In fact, by combining the two, you gain it. So we've had to go back to the to almost to first principles to say let's gather some evidence on that, because we do need to obviously think a little bit harder about this than we thought we might. Broadly, what happens is that the presence of solar panels on the land provides shelter, it provides shading. The availability of low-cost energy on site also is there for heating, lighting, irrigation. And you put all of those things together, and actually by putting the solar panels at a height above the ground that you can get beneath them for cultivation, by using bifacial panels that allow light to pass through, and by focusing on not just one crop, but by multiple crops and using the different growing areas that you create, you actually do find that the agricultural productivity of that land rises above what it would be were the panels not there. So
of course, in the UK, they actually have sheep, don't they, roaming around?
Well, so this is one of the interesting things, Tony. So if you look, agrivoltaics historically, by and large, what you mean is I've let a few sheep loose in the area to keep the grass down under the panel.
Yeah.
Now, so that's fine. So you do get that, but that is not necessarily the best agricultural use of the land. In the UK, most, or actually anywhere really at the moment, most solar installations, most ground mount solar installations are driven by the need to get as many panels into the available area as possible to maximize the financial return for investors. Now, if you remove that requirement, then you can increase the spacing of the panels, and then that's when you really start to push up the agricultural productivity, because now you can get machinery, people planting between the panels, as I say, create different areas. And so the proposal that we're bringing forward is not atypical of UK agrivoltaic propositions, because we're starting from a very different point. And this really brings me around to why we've decided to push this one forward in advance of any consideration of wind energy. It's because of the multiplier effect we get for community benefits.
What's the sort of size of site you're talking about here?
We're talking 5 hectares, so that's 12.5 acres in old money.
Yeah, yeah.
Size-wise, 200 yards by 200 yards, 200 meters by 350 meters. It's the plot of land that we are talking about, the site that we've selected, is the field that is immediately behind Mains Yard, so that sort of industrial area as you head out towards the coast. So it's on the north side, it's bounded by Mains Yard. On the east side, it's bounded by the path that runs out past Stenhams towards the coast.
Yeah.
On the west side, it's bounded by the path that runs out past Fett Farm, again towards the coast. And on the south side, it's bounded. There is a fence that runs along there, just north of some of the old World War II bunkers that are there. So it's that piece of land there. There's currently some horses grazing on it at the moment.
I mean, it's not going to be seen by the public that easily, is it?
Well, surprisingly not. We talk about being hidden in plain sight. If you actually walk out there, I mean, people do use those paths. But if you actually walk out and look across, you'll see that actually that land is in a bowl.
Yeah.
So if you move sideways away from that site, it becomes invisible very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. So it seems ideal, doesn't it, from that point of view?
Yeah, you certainly, I mean, for example, you certainly can't see it from the coast path. The only place that you can see it from clearly is if you're on the aircraft on approach to runway 26.
Yeah, well, everyone is told to look left at that point.
Well, exactly. Yeah, everybody looked towards the sea now. Everybody looked to Cashriere. Oh, look, I can see France in the distance.
I like the way it was described as a solar garden. I thought that was quite interesting. You know, you've talked about agriculture, but it's also fairly good, isn't it, from the point of view of wildlife and nature in general?
Well, it's very much part of the ethos of it. So we're sort of combining solar array, solar farm with market garden, and we end up with the Alderney solar garden. It's one of the aspects, one of the key drivers around the way that we deliver this project is to increase biodiversity. So and by using the margins of the site for biodiversity, for planting of types that encourage wildlife and both flora and fauna. What we also do is we increase the number of pollinators available in that particular area, which again pushes the agricultural productivity higher and higher. But market garden, I think, is the right way of thinking about it, because what that is, it's a site that is growing a range of crops at different times of the year, focused on increasing the availability of fresh local produce.
Like you said,
it's not one big crop. And therefore, actually, it also has lots of other fringe benefits. So there's an educational benefits. Kids from the school can find out what's going on there. They can find out about the different things that are growing and that are planted at different times of year, how to take that produce and cook healthy, nutritious meals, and so on and so forth. Really, I think there's, there are a lot of people actually already starting to show interest in this project because of, I say, the way that we're rolling out, where we've taken the focus off the immediate financial return. We're not short of land, and so we don't have to be that constrained. So there's a lot of people around the world in the agrivoltaics community who are quite interested to see how this and other projects like it are developing. So we see a sort of green tourism aspect to this, and it just continues from there. The benefits just grow and grow and grow.
And then you've got the Wildlife Trust on side about it.
Wildlife Trust are on side about it.
Yeah.
The Bird Observatory we've spoken to, and both of those organisations are involved in certainly in the environmental impact assessment, but also looking forward about how we develop the site for that flora, fauna, for the wildlife, for the bird life, and other things that all the other things that we are trying to harmonise with the energy productivity.
I thought it was very interesting in the presentation that the panels are mounted effectively on a framework that is driven into the ground and doesn't need God knows how many tons of concrete to set each bit.
Yeah, very much so. And again, that's another feature of the site. We do believe that we've got about sort of 12, 18 inches of topsoil. We're just doing some test pits to see what's actually there. But we then think we've got 8, 9 feet of a sort of clay shale mixture before you get down to anywhere near bedrock, which is ideal for piling. So yeah, you literally drive metal. It's all actually heavily automated and actually sort of technology driven these days. So you have these piling machines that literally just go and knock these piles straight into the ground at the appropriate distance. You then come along and sort of put cross beams between them and up the panels go. It's a very, very quick process. So we've looked at that. The piling of the site should take less than a week.
Incredible. And of course, the thing is that you, excuse me, you made some inquiries about the glassy site.
Yeah.
And you've got about 6 inches of soil and then rock.
This is what we discovered. We could put panels up there. The site isn't big enough, but what you've got, I was thinking, it's great. It's a lovely grassy mound that we can bang piles into. You scrape the surface off, and it's just a big old cheese-shaped lump of rock in there. So that would actually be very, very expensive to drill into. Plus the fact it's a heritage site, and we knew that we were going to get resistance to that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about it was adjacent to the power station, but totally. having exhausted that one. So,
well, you will recall actually, Tony. I'll just bring people back that when we were talking about this, when we started having these conversations, going back, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, something like that, and I started to float the idea that the Glacier might be a good site. You will recall that actually part of my rationale for proposing that site was to make it almost as complicated as possible with heritage and visibility and all the rest of it, so that if nothing else, we could actually test what the community appetite for this kind of project was. What were they prepared to put up with in order to deliver a more sustainable future around energy, which actually neatly brings us on to the wind energy piece, because whilst we're not sort of taking that off the table, as things stand at the moment, it's a fairly binary proposition. We have a particular type of wind turbine we want to use, we have a particular location we want to put those, and so we either do it or we don't. But there you've got visual impact and other things which are really quite concerning to members of the community, and so the questions that will be asked around solar are very different. Have been asked around solar are very different from the questions which will be asked around wind.
But the thing is, James, by definition, you can't do the whole lot at once. Solar, wind, batteries. So you've got to do it in stages. Solar makes a lot of sense for the first stage. Yeah. How easy is it to connect it into the grid?
Well, actually, it's relatively straightforward. What we're looking at doing is running new cables west from the site across the land there, and it's soft dig all the way around. And we go around the margins of field boundaries and otherwise to take it to the airport. We've got a brand new substation at the airport, which at the time we deliberately oversized just in case the airport development all went ahead. And again, we're going back 6, 7 years and just trying to future-proof this stuff. But you may also recall that at the time we put in new cabling to the airport to put all that on a loop. We ran high voltage cables up Allier, Fay, Rue de Saline, Fosso Chevalier, and then across the fields behind Rose Farm and up to the airport. So we've actually got a large capacity copper high voltage cables running directly from the power station to the airport. So it means that we can feed that power very that solar power can be fed into the grid with very few losses. So it's an ideal location from that point of view. Further, as and when the airport development does go ahead, then we do have scope to expand the number of panels there to provide more solar energy for the airport. And given the airport is only open in daylight hours, we could get to a point where we effectively have a solar powered airport.
Yeah, that's interesting. Absolutely.
Right.
So based on your current data, what sort of harvest would you hope to get in the summer months from it, from the solar side of it, in terms of, percentage power produced?
So we talked about delivering a third of the island's electricity, or a minimum of a third of the island's electricity from renewable sources, and said we could do that within 3 years.
Yeah.
Half of that will come from this solar. Actually, upwards of half of that will come from solar. So somewhere between a sixth and a quarter of the island's electricity supply could come from this solar array in any given year.
And of course, just got to emphasize the fact if you're producing a load of solar, you don't have to run so many engines.
Correct. Yeah. So that's 1/6 of the total diesel that we're currently using. So what's that? Another 250, 300,000 litres of diesel that we will not be using just from this solar array. If we add that to the 250,000 or so litres that we've saved through efficiency gains on the network and by modernising the power station, well, we're over 500,000 litres of diesel that we're not using.
Yeah.
That's the amount of diesel. It's about half the amount of diesel that we take in a particular shipment.
Can you tell us a bit about your preferred partner in this? Because you are using a specialist who's done it all over the world, and obviously that's the way to go, isn't it?
Yeah, we're using a company called IPV FlexGen. We have, over the last 6-7 years, we've spoken to lots of different organisations who specialise in the development and consenting of solar projects. IPV have been active for the last 15 years. They've done mostly working in the UK. They've done a lot of projects. They've consented and delivered a lot of projects. The two reasons really why IPV appeal as a partner. Firstly, is they've been doing all the work down in Jersey, so they are at least familiar with island practices, planning in small communities, things like that. Second is that of the companies that we've spoken to, they are particularly innovative in their approach, and they do look for very much for additional benefits, and so they're ideally placed to help us develop the agrivoltaic side. IPV, I mean, for example, IPV were out in Denver in June at a global agrivoltaics conference, and they were presenting this project to other members of the community out there, which is why we know that we're starting to get this interest from the global community.
Yeah. So they would provide the package in terms of the solar farm, yes, and you would then you would then do the connection to the airport.
Correct. So there are lots of different people involved with this kind of stuff who are all specialists. Think of IPV FlexGen as the project managers.
Yep.
So they won't do it all themselves. We will need to bring in a specialist civil engineering contractor to do the piling and to put up the panels, because we have no experience of that at all. Thereafter, so what happens is that specialist contractor will put up the piling, put up the panels. They will cable the panels.
Yeah.
They will install the inverters and then link all of those up. The output from the panels will then go to a transformer.
Yeah.
And that's where we take over. So everything from the transformer back to the power station is for us. So we will procure the transformer, we will site it, we will connect it all up, and that's it. So
do they offer guarantees for this sort of work? I mean, are you okay for 5 years, 10 years, or anything like that, or is it at your risk ultimately?
There's a balance here to be struck, and that's part of the sort of final negotiations around what you do and what you don't do. Obviously, risk impacts upon the maintenance costs, the ongoing operational costs of such a thing. And if we push too much back onto the installers for too long a period of time, then prices rise. The reality is that these, what we are asking them for is the bit that we will be working with the contractors for is actually the lowest cost element of this. The largest costs are associated with the transformers, cabling, and so on and so forth, because that's mostly copper and that's expensive, and that's all bought under warranty. The so in a £2.5 million project, which is more or less what we're looking at, the actual cost of the solar side of that is under £1 million.
Right. Okay. Because, I've sort of read that a lot of panels have come down in price over the
Yeah.
last few years, it get cheaper
The
and
prices,
cheaper.
exactly so. The price has dropped a long way, and the quality of the panels is very high. The reliability of the panels is very high. We would expect to still have 80% of the output. So if we install the panels tomorrow, 40 years from now, we would still expect to have 80% of the output that we have today.
So they gradually fade over a period of
They
time,
gradually fade over
like,
time, or
like
you lose
everything. Yeah.
bits, you lose elements of the cell. And you can go, and obviously at the point where a particular panel has failed, you could just go in and replace it.
How quickly could it happen? And from the consumer's point of view, what effect will it have on cost?
Right, so it could happen next year.
Yeah.
We are in a position where, depending upon, we've got to go through the consenting process now, and there are a number of things that need to happen with that, and we're trying to work with the states to make sure that all of those issues are dealt with. But the first thing is that we need to go through the public consultation exercise. So we need a clear steer from the community that this is something they want. The public meetings were very positive, and that's a start, but there's a ways to go with that to make sure as many people have had a chance to comment as possible. So I'm going to say by the start of September, we should be in a position to understand or have an evidence base to support that view. So by the beginning of September, we do really one of two things. We say, yep, we're going ahead with this as described, or no, you obviously hate it, we're going to stop, or thanks for your input. It's broadly the same, but we've made these modifications and we've changed our plan in order to suit the community's requirements here. We have most of the work already done for consenting. We have to do some more work on the environmental impact, but we are hoping to have the full package of information that we need to go into planning by the end of the year.
You've got a lot of information from the exhibition, haven't you, available in your office?
Yeah, correct. So we have set up
people should go and see that if they didn't go to the presentation.
They absolutely should. So from now until, well, let's say middle of August, we set up an exhibition in the in Olivier Street, and what was the old Mind office?
Yeah.
So that's the one that's where the Alderney Electricity office is. It's the one across the arch. It's the other side of the arch. So it's almost the mirror office. We set up two rooms in there. One is really talking about what we've done over the last 10 years and showing people the steps we've taken over the last 10 years to actually get to a point where we could do this, bearing in mind we would not have been able to contemplate a project of this size had we not done the work that we've done over the last 10 years. But then the second part of the exhibition talks about the solar garden and what the plans are and what that actually means in terms of energy, agriculture, biodiversity, and other community benefits. We're also showing the presentation that we did last week on a TV reel. Mm-hmm. We're also showing those videos that Cam made for us, talking about the existing electricity supply, how we get oil, our trip to Scotland, all those sorts of things. And Cam is now putting together a final video that will go there, which is actually taken from the public meetings themselves, so people can gauge the response and the types of questioning that we had at the public meetings. There will be a visitor's book. There is opportunity to send me emails with questions or comments or otherwise. We let that run for a month, and then we collate the information at the end of it and take that forward as evidence into the planning process.
So all pretty involved, but I think very interesting, and certainly something that's got to be done, because it's not necessarily all about looking after the planet. It's a lot of it is all about our energy security on the island here, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talk about price. The focus here is very much about reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, reducing the risk associated with supply chain and price volatility. If we can get down to the point where we're only using 1/6 of the diesel for electricity storage, well, that's 1/6 of the risk that we're carrying. So sorry, if we get down to 60%, then we're we're talking 2/3 of the risk. So that's significant. That's worth having. The in the first instance, it doesn't have a massive impact upon cost because it is only a relatively small percentage of our total electricity demand. And whilst solar production is cheaper, we've got to pay the capital cost.
Yeah.
Sadly, in Alderney, we don't get all of the. We're not don't get all these lovely grants that people get to throw millions of pounds at this sort of experimental project. We have to find all the money ourselves. We're using money that we either got or we borrow it from commercial providers or otherwise, really. So part of this is very much about working out how we access funding as cheaply as possible, but what that means is for the next 6 or 7 years, the impact upon energy pricing is relatively modest while we have to pay off that debt. Thereafter, things improve.
So, I mean, is it fair to say that prices are not going to significantly rise as a result of this project? You hope to try and retain the status quo?
Oh, yeah. They'll actually, prices should fall slightly as a result of this project in the first instance. And then we were talking, no, it's not huge. We, at the moment, the conservative estimate, because this is based on maximum interest that we're likely to be paying over the life of the loan, the minimum electricity output, we're saying over the next 6, 7 years, this should move electricity prices in the right direction by about 2 pence. Once the project's paid off, then it's 7 or 8 pence, something like that. So already you are, most people on the island would be paying probably 46, 47, 48 pence per unit. So this is pushing it back down towards 40 in the longer run. But of course, who knows what price diesel is going to be in those by 6, 7, 8 years from now.
I can't see it getting cheaper.
Oh, I can't see it getting any cheaper, and that's the point. It's what we're looking at here is not trying to simply provide cheap energy per se, but actually trying to manage those risks that decrease the sustainability of the community.
James, as far as the wind side's concerned, it's obviously a separate segment of the project as a whole. When do you think you'll be in a situation to bring this to the public attention?
I mean, we could bring it to the public's attention now, but we've got a lot of work to do around the solar project now to make sure that moves fast. That'll take us up to Christmas, what with all the planning considerations, working with states on legal matters and otherwise. So first half of next year.
Yeah, okay. So, we'll hopefully before the end of June next year.
Yeah, precisely. First half of next year. And remember, we said 3 years, so that takes us to the end of 2026 anyway. So it's not as if we are stretching out beyond that original timeline that we were talking about. All of this was factored into that original 3-year timeline.
Now, you made the point at the presentation that solar was the summer source. Winter, of course, is wind, isn't it?
It is more, and we put up those graphs, which are, I say, available in the presentation that people can see in the office, which shows how, if you combine wind and solar, it balances your energy output across the year. Now, in Alderney, our energy usage is reasonably constant. Actually, it falls a little bit during the winter because we've got less people on the island. And in fact, what we're starting to see, what we see in winter largely is an increase in kerosene usage for heating, but the electricity load falls a bit across the winter, because it's very much related to the number of people that are on island at any one time. So if you take wind and you take solar, putting the two of them together, that increase that you get in the winter almost perfectly matches the demand fluctuation we see on electricity across the year. So they work really well together.
Now, finally, can we just talk about batteries? Because you came up with a frightening statistic in terms of the UK and the cost of batteries and things like that. But obviously, you see the battery as the method of continuing the supply if you get a minor failure at the power station, yeah?
That's mostly what it's there. It does two things. It provides resilience on the network because it is think of it as another genset that actually can be started instantaneously. So we can start up a diesel genset fairly quickly because they're warm in the background, but it takes about 30 seconds to actually bring one up online and generating. Battery storage sits there, it's available immediately. So therefore, it provides response to issues that we have on the network. So you have a problem at the power station. Last power cut 10 days ago, with case in point, if we saw something like that, the system would simply start taking power from the battery until it could bring up another engine, and it only needs to do that for 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So what we found with the other side of it is around to balance out the demand from solar wind. So if you've got a megawatt of solar, cloud goes behind the sun, you could lose half a megawatt just very quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
And the battery is there to pick up those fluctuations. So we're not having to continually start and stop diesel engines.
Mm.
So there's an interesting calculation which is rather different from how people are conventionally thinking about energy storage for grid systems. And actually, what we've discovered is you start looking at a whole grid system, the role of storage changes, and it is very much at that level. How much do you need to manage within the response time of the system? Right. And how much more do you need to ensure that you're not continually starting and stopping diesel engines and seeing your maintenance costs go through the roof? In the UK, it's a very different situation. So they've been investing a lot of battery storage and saying, oh, well, this is essential for renewable energy. It is, but only up to a point, Lord Copper. Mm. What's actually happening in the UK is you've got grid contention, so you can't move power as quickly around the UK as you would like. Because of that, they've moved into peak time pricing. Yeah. So your price of your energy goes up at times when they really don't want you to use it. And because of that, there are lots of the finance houses who have stepped in and said, oh, great, well, this is fine because we can now buy power from the grid at 45 pence. Yeah. At 5 or 6 pence in the middle of the night and sell it back to the grid at 45 pence in the day. We can make truckloads of money out of this. What you see, however, that expansion of renewable energy or available storage is almost peaking out. So you're actually starting to see the finance houses now divesting of their assets as the amount becomes available. Sooner or later, somebody's going to have to start tackling the issue, not about how we store energy locally in the short term, but how do we actually move power around? How do we make sure our grids are working efficiently? How do we manage all of those things? How do we drive different demand-based models? Now, we don't have that issue on Alderney, but also it does mean that Alderney is an interesting test bed for that kind of thinking.
Very much so. You wouldn't believe this. We've run out of time.
Of course, we always do.
So look, thank you so much for sparing me some time. I think it's important to try and keep people updated as to what's happening here. Really, if you can, folks, try and have a look at the exhibition because you know that's obviously quite useful. And James, best of luck for the future. You know, I'm always impressed with what you've done over here.
Yeah, it's getting to the enjoyable stage now. It's getting to the fun part. So yeah, please, everybody, see the exhibition, submit your questions, comments, because we need those.
Okay, take care, James. Thanks very much.
Thank you.